If you're often very excited to get started losing weight, but get stuck in overwhelm and procrastination, I am really glad you're joining me today because that's exactly what we're going to solve. You are listening to Weight Loss Made Real, and this is episode 230. I'm your host, Master Weight Loss Coach and author Cookie Rosenblum. Today and every Tuesday, I will be your coach and your guide to help you end your emotional eating and lose that extra weight. If you just found me, welcome. And if you're a regular listener, of course, welcome back. This is where we talk about your habit of emotional eating, which is the main focus in all the work I do. Here is where coaching meets psychology and psychology meets brain science. And this is where your problem ends. So get comfy and get ready to be coached. Now, every good coach I know has a coach of their own, often one for personal work and another for their business. I am no exception. I practice what I teach you. For the past year, I've worked with our guest today, and her name is Neill Williams. I've worked with Neill on managing my own mind as I live my life and as I grow and manage my business, and I work on all kinds of things to be able to show up as the best version of myself that I can. That's what Neill has helped me with. Neill is a master certified life and time coach and is the host of her own podcast, and it's called Unbusy Your Life. She works mostly with entrepreneurs who want to simplify their lives, work less, and have more time and freedom. I'm going to put a link to Neill's website in the show notes so you could learn more about her, or just go to Neill with two L's, Neill, neillwilliams.com. Now, today I'm going to interview Neill on two subjects that I know you will relate to, even if you're not an entrepreneur. They are so related to your search for permanent weight loss that we encounter these two issues in the Freedom Group all the time. And guess what they are? They are overwhelm and procrastination. I'm excited to share this with you because I know these two habits can hold you back even when you really want to do something. So join me as I welcome Neill. So Neill, welcome.
Cookie, it's so fun to be here.
Yes, I'm so used to talking to you on a totally different level about me. And we're here today to talk about my listeners and my Freedom Group members and to share with them some wisdom that you've shared with me. And it's all about procrastination today.
Yes. As humans, we are procrastinators. I don't care who you are, you procrastinate in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. It's a common issue. So if you identify with what we're going to say and what we're going to describe, do not feel bad for one moment because you are so not alone. So what I've talked to you about, Neill, separately, is that one of the things I see very commonly in all of you who write to me, who listen to me, who've worked with me, that even when it's something you really want to do, even if it's the most important thing to you, you still sometimes bump into the wall of getting yourself started. So Neill is my resident expert for why it's so hard to get started, even if it's something that you want. So can you give us a little overview, Neill, of why people do this? Why do we all do this?
Yeah. So this is what the type of procrastination that I call overwhelm procrastination. And it happens typically anytime we try something new or we set a big goal for ourselves. Like at the end, think about it like, I think you said earlier, you used the phrase honeymoon phase. You're like super excited, super motivated. I'm going to lose this weight. My body's going to be whatever it is that you have a vision for. That sounds super exciting. But then when you get into the daily doing the work to get there, that's where we start to get into some overwhelm. If we don't have like the exact step by step how process figured out. And oftentimes when you're doing something new or you set some big goal, you don't have that exact every single step figured out.
Yes. And the funny thing is that even when you have the steps laid out,
Yes.
your brain still tells you and gives you some messages of, well,
Yeah.
this is too much.
Yeah.
How am I going to do this? When am I going to do it? I don't have time. Where do I even start?
Yeah. And all of that way of thinking, notice like if you say that to yourself, if that's the story you tell yourself, how do you feel? You probably feel overwhelmed. Most often, that's what that line of thinking lends itself to. That's the kind of feeling, overwhelmed. And when you are in a state of overwhelm, if you're like most humans, overwhelm does not produce action. We're not like moving forward when we're feeling overwhelmed. Typically, we're in some sort of stalled out, stuck state. And most often what happens is not only are we stalling out and being stuck and moving towards the thing, our goal, or what it is that we want, we also do something to self-soothe and feel immediate relief, which oftentimes is things like going to get a snack or going to get a drink or going to watch Netflix or something that gives you like an immediate relief, maybe a dopamine hit that feels way better than overwhelm does.
Right. So instead of listening to a podcast or sitting down and planning maybe your meals for the week, planning your self-care for the week, we tend to do something else because doing something else feels better than what we're telling ourselves we're facing, right?
That's right. Yeah, think about like the way that our brains are designed is to keep us safe and comfortable at all costs. Like if you wrote the job description for your brain, that would be the metrics that it is evaluating itself on. Did she feel good as much as possible? And was she safe?
Right.
And it's literally programmed to keep you in those states, right? So if your brain is offering you thoughts like what Cookie just said, like, I don't have enough time, it's too big, I don't know where to start, I don't know if I can do this, and you're feeling overwhelmed, the brain is automatically like, oh no, something's gone wrong. We must feel better right away. And so it directs you, like you go to do something that feels better immediately. Like maybe it's eating off plan or having a drink or whatever it is that you do. You feel that immediate sense of relief when you kind of like let yourself off the hook. And I think most people don't understand the power that that feeling of relief has. It's very, very powerful draw for your brain.
Yes. So even though what we do to get that relief, to feel better from the thinking that it's too much, it's too big, where do I start? And that overwhelmed feeling that, don't forget, we are creating.
Yes.
So the things that we do keep us stuck, it sounds like.
Yeah. And it feels better in the moment, right? To like that sense of relief feels way better than being in the overwhelm. And that is the only reason why we do that, because it feels better. But the bigger problem is then we always treat our overwhelm with that thing that gives us the immediate relief instead of, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken arm. Instead of diving into the root of why I'm feeling overwhelmed in the first place and like going in and doing surgery on that, we want to put the Band-Aid of relief on. So if we take that option off and we actually start asking ourselves, okay, why am I feeling overwhelmed right now? Why do I want to go do something that is against what I told myself that I would do, whether it's eating on plan or whatever it is, making a plan for your food and following it? Why am I feeling overwhelmed right now? And looking inside yourself for the answer to that question. That's always where the answer is. It's just that you have some overwhelming sentences in your brain.
Right. So I think that's a good summary sentence for everyone to jot down. When you feel overwhelmed, it's because you're entertaining and allowing overwhelming thoughts, right? And as you all know from listening to me, you create your thoughts. Thoughts will pop into your head. Lots of them you let slide by, but some of them you pay attention to and you dive deeper into and you elaborate on. And it's those thoughts that create overwhelm that leads you for relief. And that is going to do something instead of what you're trying to do, which is take action on all the things that we talk about here and in the Freedom Group. So Let me ask you this. We have another common type of procrastination we're going to talk about, but first I want to talk more about overwhelm procrastination, because we know some of the thoughts, Neill, right? And they are, there's too much. I don't know where to start. I've never done this before. I don't know what step to take first.
Yeah.
What are some of the alternative thoughts that we might come up with that we could plant in our brain on purpose and get ourselves, as soon as we hear ourselves giving us the old story of, I don't know where to start, we notice it, we see what's happening. What other thoughts could we insert in there on purpose?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple of different offerings, but I think also you want to consider, how do I actually want to feel? Because if I get to choose the way that I feel, that's really important, because my feeling fuels my action. So in order for me to make the meal plan or to eat only on plan, what I told myself I was going to eat, what do I actually need to be feeling to fuel myself to take those actions? So overwhelm is fueling your delaying of action. So instead of that, you want to think about, okay, so what do I want to feel in order to get into action, to do what it is that I told myself that I was going to do? Now, I'm going to offer two feelings that I think are super important and work for most people. Again, you have to try this on for yourself to figure out if it works. But the two that I really love are commitment and determination. If you can get yourself into commitment, it's going to override the overwhelm. If you can get yourself into determination, it will also override the overwhelm. So Cookie, what are your thoughts about those two emotions?
Well, I was immediately thinking about determination. It has to be something that you really want, and you literally have to, you can't just want it. You have to talk yourself through doing what it takes. And your thought might be as simple as, nothing will stop me. I am determined to do this. I made a commitment and I'm going to do this. What do you think, Neill?
Yeah, I love those thoughts. Nothing will stop me. That's a great one. And the way that I also like to think about this is commitment, not just to the present moment, but commitment to the long-term result. It's almost like you delay the gratification for how you want to feel to the future. So like, think about how you'd feel about yourself if you stayed on plan, or you made your plan and you only ate what you told yourself you were going to eat. You probably feel proud of yourself. So it's maybe the commitment to the future you that you're creating, and the way that that woman gets to think and feel about herself because she chose to be committed or determined in this moment.
Yes, I like that. And commitment also implies to all of us that this is not a one moment, instant, one-time thing. Committed implies that this is a project. And you're committed for the life of the project, right? And if you're changing how you're eating and feeling and thinking and what you do, that's not, I'm just not going to eat those chips after lunch when I'm not hungry. The commitment is more, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do longer term, bigger horizon.
Right. Because if you can get yourself into like the bigger vision, oftentimes that's just more compelling. It's more juicy than just how you feel in this moment right now. And if you can get yourself to that point, it's easier usually to get yourself into the determination and the commitment to create that vision. And that vision is actually created on a pile of everyday moments where you choose to be determined, you choose to be committed to this thing that you know is going to get you to that bigger term vision.
Yes, I'm on board with everything that you just said. What about the feeling of pride? The pride is, do you think about wanting to feel proud after you do what you said you were going to do? Or do you want to think about pride as you're doing the thing? How would you look at creating the feeling of pride to not procrastinate and dive in?
Yeah. I think you'd have to try this one on. I haven't really thought about like creating pride in the moment, but you could totally do that. I was thinking more along the lines of thinking about the you and how you're going to feel about yourself in that bigger vision. And maybe you feel proud of yourself for having all of those everyday moments where you chose to do the thing that you knew was going to get you to that bigger vision. But I think pride could work in the moment too, because it's almost like, instead of choosing the feeling in the moment of that immediate relief, by procrastinating, you're choosing the long-term feeling of pride or accomplishment. That one might also be a good emotion for people to think about in the long term. Instead of like choosing what feels good in the moment right now, I'm choosing what I know is going to feel better in the long run. And you could get yourself into pride in this moment. All you'd have to do is ask yourself, what would I need to be thinking about me to feel proud of myself right now? Like it might even be as simple as I'm consciously choosing in this moment. I get to consciously choose in this moment what I do. And that might create a sense of pride.
Yes. And also brief little thoughts that just remind you, I'm in charge. Yeah. I decide.
Yes.
And reassuring thoughts like I only need to take the next step.
Yes. Totally.
I also think that when we are changing how we act and we're going from procrastinating as a regular habit to doing what we say we're going to do, that part of the change, yes, it involves your thinking and the feeling you want to create, and of course what you do, but it also involves a change of identity. And I think we could look at that as how you see yourself, because right now you might not be aware, but you might see yourself as, oh, I'm just a woman who never does what she says she's going to do. I never keep my promises to myself. I always give up easily. I always have trouble getting started. And you want to think about switching that, even if you don't believe it yet, to I'm the kind of woman who does what she says she's going to do.
Yes. I love that so much. I do think this does require, I 100% agree with you, require a change in your self-concept. So if you've identified as your behavior, like I am a procrastinator or I'm just someone who doesn't follow through on what I'm going to do, you're going to keep creating evidence for that to be true and build evidence for that self-concept, that belief. But if you instead decide that you're someone who sets a big goal and feels uncomfortable, lets herself feel uncomfortable in the getting of it, that's who you'll become. You let yourself go after big things because you like the process of who you get to become and how you get to change and what it requires of you in your own learning and growth to get to that next version of you. So I love that idea, and maybe asking yourself, okay, decide what that version of you is that you're targeting. How does she think about herself in this moment? And what does she feel? And what does she do?
Yes. And if it's too big a leap for you to tell yourself, I'm the kind of woman who does what she says, then you can ease yourself into it by thinking something like, I'm becoming the kind of woman who keeps her word to herself, right?
Yes,
it's softer and it reminds your brain that you're working on it. You're doing it. Maybe you're not where you want to be yet, but every little step towards doing what you say you're going to do takes you one step closer to being that woman who makes a plan and does it. And imagine what things would be like for you if that were just an everyday thing for you.
Right.
If
that was just who you were.
Yes.
That was your new identity. How does that woman show up and present in this moment? I love that.
Exactly. And imagine the final outcome of being that woman.
Yeah.
That's what we're working towards here, changing how you think of yourself and how you show up in the world. And yes, of course, how you eat, how you manage your mind, and how you take care of yourself. Now, we just talked about overwhelm procrastination, what it looks like, what it might sound like in your own mind to you. Now, the other kind, there are several kinds, but these are the two that I wanted to zero in on with Neill today, and that is perfectionism procrastination, because so many of the women I work with, they know that they are perfectionists, and that influences how they do things. So tell me how you look at the role perfectionism plays in procrastination, Neill.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive. The way that I see this playing out is trying to perfect something is an action that we do, right? We try to make it perfect. But the feeling that fuels that action, a lot of times for many people, are feelings like self-doubt, insecurity, and worry. And so what we try to do is we try to make things perfect so that we don't have to feel the self-doubt or the insecurity or the worry. We use it backwards. We think that taking that action of perfecting is going to somehow cure us of feeling these feelings, which it doesn't, because those are generated by our brain. But it's things like, I should have done it better. I always mess this up. Other people will criticize or judge me if I don't lose weight as quickly as I should, or if I eat off plan when I told someone that I would eat a certain thing. I always do it wrong. Those are the thoughts that create those self-doubting, insecurity, worry type feelings. And then what it does is it fuels the action of delaying action, of not being all in, of not taking really committed, massive action toward the thing that you want. So it is a version of procrastination too.
So by postponing, by procrastinating what it is you really want to do, no one's making you do it, you want to do it. If you have the thought that if I don't do it perfectly, it's not worth doing, so I may as well not start. Is that what it looks like?
Yeah, because then you don't have to reconcile that way of thinking to yourself, right? If you don't start, then you don't have to look into your own mind and see the story that you're going to tell yourself about having done it wrong or failing or messing something up or not getting to your goal as quickly as you told yourself that you would. The worst part is the own story that we tell ourselves in our own minds about this. We project that out onto other people. Oftentimes we're worried about what other people might think, but really the biggest problem is how we're going to talk to ourselves. And that's what we're really concerned about.
Yes. So I think a lot of people, maybe it's just me, but in my 20s, I thought perfectionism was a good quality because I thought that, if I acted like and viewed myself as a perfectionist, people would look up to me and think that I did such a great job on everything in my life. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I remember in my 20s going on different interviews for office type jobs. And I think somebody advised me, tell them you're a perfectionist, because then they'll think that you'll do an incredible job for them.
Yeah.
But I think perfectionism, when it comes to ourselves, there's nothing wrong with aiming to do well. But when we tell ourselves that nothing but perfect from us is okay, we are holding ourselves back from so many things that if we could just get started without the fear of I've got to do it perfectly or don't bother, we'd have amazing results in our life.
Totally. Because the perfectionist, and it's funny that you say that, Cookie, because my nickname that my sister gave me as a little girl when we were growing up was Little Miss Perfect. And I wore that like a badge of honor. I was like, yeah, I am. And into my 20s and probably even early 30s as well, I still had that same identity. I'm Miss Perfect. I do everything perfectly. But what I realized was then I don't go do things that I don't think I can do perfectly. And so I'm missing out on so much of life, so much growth in my own personal development because I'm only going to do things that I think I can do perfectly. It's in the being willing to do things messy and failing and making mistakes where we have our biggest growth. And I think that is the biggest downfall of perfectionism.
It's not allowing us the grace of failing when we learn something new. And yet that is an integral part of growth and change. So it's so self-limiting to believe that, well, there's no point in getting started because my schedule's not right this week. I'll wait for a better time when there's more open space in my schedule. Versus any little movement is better than none. Any step I take counts, taking me towards what I want.
Yeah. And I think it also speaks to really an overarching distrust of ourselves when we're trying to perfect something. What we're really telling ourselves is, well, if you mess it up, I'm not going to support you. That's the story that we tell ourselves. We'll only support ourselves and give ourselves the attaboy if we do it exactly right. And oftentimes part of the problem with that is the exactly right is based on what other people's judgments of what exactly right should look like. And so I think it's a stuck kind of in a hamster wheel kind of stalling out situation, because if it has to be perfect and we don't think that we can handle the failure along the way, the things that we'll go after in our lives are very small. Think about that. Like if you can't handle failure or making mistakes because of the way that you will treat yourself, you're always going to go after these like really small, in what's in your mind, attainable, realistic goals, instead of going after the biggest vision for your life that you could ever imagine, knowing that in order to get there, you are going to make a mistake, you are going to fail. But that is part of what the process is supposed to be, so that you can learn and grow into becoming the woman who can be the woman in that vision.
It really kind of makes sense to treat yourself the way we all treat other people, who see other people trying, failing, trying, doing it, but not doing it perfectly. We're so compassionate with them, like, oh, at least they gave it a good try, or come on, you'll learn, you'll get better. And with ourselves, it's like 100% A+ or don't bother.
Yeah, it's that all or nothing. Like I'll support myself when I do it perfectly right, but then I'm just going to beat myself up in my own mind if I do 99%.
Right. Beat myself up and give up. Now, one of the things that I find helpful when I am coaching my group is to teach them how to name their perfectionist story. And to just recognize like, oh, there I go again into my story about how it's got to be perfect. And once you do that, it allows you to step back a little bit, see that this is just the replay of the old has to be perfect movie in your head, and realize that you're in charge of it. You can just turn it off and take any little step and do it imperfectly. What are some thoughts that you could suggest, Neill, for people who have the perfectionistic habits that holds them back from getting what they want most, whether it's weight loss, keeping promises to themselves, anything in life?
Yeah. So I love a couple of things. So I love the feeling of, and I'm going back to the feeling line because the feeling is what fuels our actions. So I love the feeling of curiosity and the feeling of fascination. So if you notice that you're telling yourself that story, like your perfectionist story, I love that. I love that idea, Cookie. I would sit back and when I recognize that I'm saying those things to myself, I would ask myself, why? Why am I doing this right now? Because you probably know when you tell yourself that story, you know the end result of that. I'm guessing, like if you've done this work, you have an idea of where that road leads. So then you just stop and you question yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I feeling this way? Oh, it's because I'm thinking something. What is it that I'm thinking right now? And then you get into, from curiosity, you see the thinking that is causing the whole thing. And then when you realize like it's optional, I can actually think something different if I want to. I could keep this thought, totally fine. I know where that leads, or I can choose something different. What would that be like? What would it be like to try on this thought? So I like to just leave it like open to curiosity in both ways and choosing something new and trying that on. And I also like to always go to my future self for this too. Like the future me who's not stuck in this perfectionist tendency, what does she have to tell me about what I could think, what I could choose right now to think or to feel or to do, and get wisdom from my future me?
I like that, Neill. What about the people who are listening to us who are saying, well, what's wrong with wanting to do a good job? What's wrong with wanting things to be really perfect? And what if I just have really high standards? What would you say to those people?
I think it's totally fine. Keep your high standards, keep your perfectionism. You just want to see, like, is it getting me what I want, right? The only reason why we ever change any behavior or any thought or any feeling is because we recognize, oh, when I think this way, or I feel this, or I do this, this is the effect. Do you like the effect that you have? And if you do, if you don't want to change, then totally keep it. I never want anyone to feel like they have to change something ever. I really want to just empower them to see the effect of it and then give them the freedom to choose, keep choosing that, or to choose something different. So I think every single person would have to just like look at this and see, what is the effect of this for me? Is it preventing me from getting something that I want? Then it may be legitimate for me to look at and consider changing. But if I don't see an effect in my life that I don't like, then there would be no reason to change it.
Right. So is it working for you or is it holding you back? But even if it's working for you, I just want to insert a little caution in here. If it's working for you and it's getting you to do the things that you want to do by pushing yourself and saying it must be a certain way, so I'm going to do it this way or not do it at all, how do you feel? Is it feeling like constant pressure and you're doing all the things you want to do, but it feels awful? So it's not just looking at your to-do list and saying, I said I would do this and I must do it a certain way. And that perfectionism is helping me have a high standard. But how do you feel?
And something just came to me quickly I wanted to offer here. When you say you have a high standard, I want you to question where that is directed towards. Because you could have a high standard, yes, but do you have a high standard for how you treat yourself in the event that you do make a mistake, in the event that you do something at B minus, in the event where you fail on your way towards a big goal? What is your standard for how you treat yourself in those instances? That might be something important to look into too.
Yes, and hopefully it's in line with how you treat other people.
Yeah.
Because most of us do not hold other people to the same impossible standards that we do to ourselves. So here's a little bonus. There's one other type of procrastination that I wanted to just touch on briefly that some of you may experience, and that is indecision procrastination. How does that look, Neill? What do people do or not do, or what's the thought process like for that kind of procrastination?
Yeah. So the thought process looks like there's a right decision. I don't know what the right answer is. I just need more information. I might make a wrong decision. I might regret it. So that way of thinking, those thoughts typically create feelings of confusion or fear or worry or doubt. And what we do when we're in that is we spin out either an indecision. We're like, oh, I just can't make a decision. I keep thinking about it. And I'm thought looping about what the right decision is. Or I make a decision and then I question myself. And then I go out and I maybe like look at a bunch of other people to see what they're doing to like validate that I made the right decision. And it's just really a waste of time and mental energy and brain energy to be stuck in that. This goes back to self-concept, to what you were saying earlier, Cookie, when you become someone who just supports herself no matter what, it takes the pressure off of making a right or wrong decision, or even that there is a right or wrong decision, because no matter what the outcome is, you've got your own back. And so it just makes it so much easier for you to just make a decision, implement, make a decision, implement. And because you know how to handle your own brain if you get an effect that you didn't want. I happen to really think that there are no right or wrong decisions, that every decision I make still moves me forward. And for me, that's a really freeing thought. It's like, oh, I just have to decide. And literally it takes like a split second to make a decision. And then I just implement it and move forward. And if I don't get the result that I want, I just make a new decision, implement, move forward. Again, you're still moving forward and staying, instead of an indecision where you're just spinning out and staying stuck by taking no action.
Yes. And by taking no action, you get no feedback. Right. And you just stay stuck in your belief of that's too big, that's too scary, I'm not sure, I can't do it. All those different procrastination thoughts will keep you exactly where you are today. Ooh. And, for some parts of your life, that's a wonderful thing. But for the parts that you're working on with me that you want to see change in, you're going to have to dip your toe in the water and take that risk to just start and do something imperfectly and get feedback. And that will reinforce you doing it again and again when you see that it's rare for something awful to happen when you dive in and take action.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point about feedback. Feedback is the thing that will teach you all the things you need to know to get to where you want to be. It's just that we have such a negative connotation around feedback because we automatically think it means something horrible about ourselves. Like if we get negative feedback that there was something wrong with us or we did it wrong, versus just trying to learn the lesson from the feedback and using that lesson to move us to the next step forward.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Neill today and learned a little bit about your habit of being excited about getting on a program, but then procrastinating and thinking thoughts that create overwhelm for yourself. So that is it for our chat today. I think you know what you're going to think about based on our chat and what you'll focus on this week. Before you go, check the show notes. In them, I tell you how to connect with and work with me in the Freedom Group, how to reach Neill if you'd like to learn more about her and her work, and don't forget, especially if you're new here, to grab a free downloadable copy of my full-length book, Clearing Your Path to Permanent Weight Loss. It's available in hard copy on Amazon, but as my listener, for a limited time, this is going away soon, the downloadable version is totally free for you. So grab a copy. I hope to see you back here next week where we will continue to work on your emotional eating and your habitual overeating step by step until they both become something that you used to do, because we know that that's your ultimate goal. So for now, this is your Coach Cookie reminding you that as you search for answers, keep it real, my friend, just like you. And I will see you next week.